child draws a picture. Pink crayon on white paper. A stick figure labeled best friend. Another stick figure labeled me. They hold hands in the drawing. The child is 6 years old. She doesn't know that one day the person she trusts most in the entire world will decide to end her life. This is not a story about criminals who lurk in dark places. This is not a story about strangers who prey on the vulnerable. This is a story about the most dangerous predators on earth, the ones who already know your name, who have your phone number, who have slept in your home, who have cried with your parents. This is the story of 8 teenagers who committed crimes so profoundly evil that it forced entire nations to re-examine their understanding of human nature. They are the childhood friends, the best friends, the girls who cried at your funeral while knowing exactly where your body was buried. They are the people standing shoulder to shoulder with your mother during the search, offering comfort while the truth remains hidden. They are the betrayal doctrine in human form. Welcome to Dark Truth Crime. I am your host. For the next 35 minutes, we are going to explore 8 cases that will fundamentally challenge your understanding of who is safe and who is dangerous. We are going to demonstrate, case by case, that the most terrifying predators do not always lurk in shadows. Sometimes they are the people you trust most in the world. Before we begin, if you have not already, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. This story requires your full attention. Leave a comment below telling us where you are watching from and what time it is in your area. We read every single comment. We want to know how this story is affecting you right now. Let us begin. Case 1. The childhood friend who wore her blood, Michaela Costanza. In the summer of 2010, the town of West Wendover, Nevada, was a place where children played outside until dark, where doors were left unlocked, where neighbors knew the names of every child on the block. It was the kind of place where nothing bad happened. It was exactly the kind of place where something catastrophic would soon occur. Michaela Costanza was 16 years old. She carried herself with the poise of someone much older. She was the heart of West Wendover High School, not because of shallow popularity, but because she possessed a radiant quality that drew people toward her. She was a dedicated member of the track team. She was bright in her classes. She had a smile that lit up rooms and a future that seemed absolutely unlimited. Cody Patton grew up in the same neighborhood as Michaela. They played together as children. They had shared history together. But as they entered their teenage years, Michaela made a conscious choice to distance herself from Cody. She had moved forward. She had found her community in athletics and academics. Cody had moved in a different direction entirely. He was entangled in a relationship that would define his trajectory toward violence. His romantic partner was 19-year-old Tony Fratto. Their relationship was constructed on a foundation of severe physical abuse and psychological control. The 2 teenagers became obsessed with Michaela. They decided to end her life. On Thursday, March 3, 2011, Cody and Tony prepared their plan. Cody approached a friend and requested the use of her vehicle. He provided a cover story. Wendy believed him and gave him the keys. Throughout the day, Cody sent Michaela a series of text messages. He was relentless in his requests. He needed to meet with her. The messages were designed to create a sense of normalcy, a sense that he was simply a former friend reaching out. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, school surveillance cameras captured Cody in the hallways of West Wendover High School. He was waiting for Michaela. When Michaela finally came out, exhausted from practice, Cody intercepted her. He offered her a ride home. She was hesitant, but he was someone she had known her entire life. She made the decision to trust him. She would not make another decision again. Cody steered the SUV away from town and drove toward isolated areas on the edges of West Wendover. 5 miles outside of town, near the Utah border, he parked at a gravel pit surrounded by nothing but brush and dirt. Tony Fratto emerged from hiding in the vehicle. The plan was put into motion. What happened next resulted in Michaela's death. The 2 teenagers left her body in the desert and drove away from the gravel pit, leaving her in the darkness of the desert night. What happened next is where this case transforms from a murder into something far more sinister. Michaela's mother panicked when her daughter did not come home. West Wendover mobilized. Hundreds of volunteers gathered in the streets. They organized search grids. They walked through the desert with flashlights. They called out Michaela's name into the darkness, hoping for a response, hoping for a miracle. Cody Patton walked among them. He joined the search party. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Michaela's mother, the woman whose daughter he had just murdered. He offered her comfort. He offered her support. He performed the role of a devastated friend with such precision that nobody questioned him. He walked through the desert brush for hours, pretending to search for the girl he had killed just hours earlier. He looked into the eyes of grieving adults and showed them nothing but concern. The performance was flawless. The evidence that destroyed his facade came from school surveillance footage. It showed Cody stalking Michaela through the hallways. It showed him leaving with her. It showed the timeline that made his story impossible. Police brought Cody into the interrogation room. Confronted with the video evidence, he admitted to the killing, but he attempted to minimize his guilt through a lie. He told detectives that the death was accidental. He was lying. The evidence showed premeditation. The evidence showed planning. The evidence showed a calculated execution. He directed police to the location. Michaela Costanza was found and brought home in a way no parent should ever have to receive their child. Cody was arrested. While incarcerated, he and his father passed handwritten notes back and forth, discussing Tony's involvement in the crime. Both killers realized they had no escape. Tony Fratto pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. Cody Patton pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will spend every remaining day of his life in a cell. Tony Fratto was sentenced to life in prison, eligible for parole only after serving 18 years. Both remain incarcerated in the Nevada Department of Corrections. Michaela Costanza trusted her childhood friend. She got into a car expecting a ride home. She was delivered to her own execution. Case 2. The Polygraph Liar. Kirsten Costas High School is a battlefield. It is a place where the intense desire to fit in completely consumes a teenager's mind. It is a place where social status determines everything. In the summer of 1984, the town of Orinda, California, was a picture of suburban perfection. It was an affluent, quiet community, filled with sprawling homes, manicured lawns, and highly successful families. At the center of the local social scene was Miramonte High School, and at the very top of the high school hierarchy was 15-year-old Kirsten Costas. Kirsten was everything that a teenage girl in the 1980s was supposed to be. She was bright. She was energetic. She was beautiful. She was a varsity cheerleader. She came from a wealthy family. She wore the right clothes. She belonged to an exclusive sorority-like service group called the Bobo Lynx. Kirsten had the world at her fingertips. She was the girl everyone wanted to be friends with. She was the girl everyone secretly wanted to be. In the very same town, attending the very same school, was 15-year-old Bernadette Proy. But Bernadette existed in an entirely different universe. She came from a working-class family. She was smart, but she felt entirely inadequate compared to the wealthy, popular girls who dominated Miramonte High. She desperately wanted the designer clothes. She desperately wanted the social status. Above all, she desperately wanted the cheerleader uniform. Bernadette tried out for the cheerleading squad. She was rejected. Kirsten made the team. Bernadette tried to join the Bobo Lynx. She felt entirely sidelined. In Bernadette's mind, Kirsten became the ultimate symbol of everything she was denied. She convinced herself that Kirsten looked down on her. She convinced herself that Kirsten was deliberately excluding her. This deep-seated jealousy festered in the dark corners of Bernadette's mind. It evolved from typical teenage envy into a cold, calculated resentment. She decided that if she could not be Kirsten Costas, she would erase her. 2 days before the murder, Bernadette executed a calculated trap. She made an anonymous phone call to Kirsten's mother. Disguising her voice, Bernadette told the mother about a secret, mandatory initiation dinner for new members of the Bobo Lynx. She instructed the mother to keep it a secret from Kirsten, but to make sure the teenager was ready to go on Saturday night. The bait was set. On the evening of June 23, 1984, Bernadette told her parents she was going out to babysit. She drove to the Costas home. Kirsten, expecting a fun evening with her peers, got into the passenger seat. As they drove away from the familiar streets and headed into a darker neighborhood, the atmosphere inside the car shifted dramatically. Bernadette's demeanor became hostile. Kirsten immediately realized something was horribly wrong. There was no dinner. She was trapped in a car with a girl radiating pure malice. An argument broke out. During the confrontation, Kirsten told Bernadette she was going to tell everyone at school that she was weird. That single threat to Bernadette's fragile social standing was the ultimate trigger. Terrified, Kirsten unbuckled her seatbelt. She opened the door. She bolted out of the car. She sprinted toward the nearest house, desperately knocking on the door of a neighbor, Alex Arnold, looking for sanctuary. Alex Arnold agreed to drive her back to her own house. Arnold drove Kirsten home and pulled up outside the Costas residence. He sat in his parked car in the shadows, waiting to make sure the teenage girl got inside safely. But Bernadette had not driven away. She had tracked them down. She was not done. Bernadette caught up to Kirsten right in front of the Costas home. She attacked her. Kirsten managed to stumble to a nearby porch. Neighbors called an ambulance, but Kirsten's injuries were fatal. Kirsten Costas died as a result of the attack. She was 15 years old. Bernadette ran back to her car. She drove off into the night. She drove home and did something remarkable. She casually asked her mother to go for an evening walk. She compartmentalized the slaughter she had just committed so completely that she was able to engage in normal conversation with her mother, as if absolutely nothing had happened. The murder of Kirsten Costas sent a shock wave of absolute terror through Orinda. Parents locked their doors. Teenagers were afraid to walk home alone. The community believed a deranged psychopath was roaming their streets. But the psychopath was sitting right next to them in algebra class. In the days and weeks following the murder, Bernadette Proy executed the most chilling and flawless performance of her life. She returned to Miramonte High School and seamlessly blended into the mourning student body. She attended Kirsten's funeral, shedding tears alongside the girl's devastated parents. She hugged her classmates, offering comfort and sharing in their grief. She openly wept in the hallways, mourning the tragic loss of her supposed friend. In August, just months after the attack, Bernadette went to a local swim club with a group of peers. As they lounged by the pool, her friends openly discussed the horrific murder. They talked about how terrible a person had to be to do such a thing to Kirsten. Bernadette sat completely quiet. She listened to her friends condemn the murderer, knowing she was the murderer. The police launched a massive investigation. They interviewed hundreds of students. They brought Bernadette in for questioning, as she was known to associate with Kirsten. Bernadette sat in the police interrogation room and calmly denied any knowledge of the crime. She even agreed to take a police polygraph test. She passed it without a single flinch. For 6 full months, Bernadette Proy lived a double life. The FBI stepped in to construct a psychological profile of the killer. The profile concluded that the murderer was a teenage girl from the community who possessed the psychopathic ability to show absolutely no remorse under pressure. Armed with the profile and eyewitness descriptions, detectives began re-examining the case. The net slowly tightened around the Proy family. The FBI repeatedly brought Bernadette in for increasingly intense interviews. The pristine facade of the grieving classmate finally cracked. Bernadette realized the police were closing in. Rather than wait to be arrested, she made a decision. On a quiet morning, Bernadette left a written confession on her dresser for her mother. The letter outlined the chilling truth. She wrote, "I've been trying to tell you this all day, but I love you so much it is too hard. I have ruined my life and yours, and I do not know what to do, and I am ashamed and scared." The arrest of Bernadette Proy absolutely shattered the community. The trial was a highly publicized spectacle. Bernadette attempted to minimize her actions. She claimed she never intended to kill Kirsten. The Costas family publicly called out the absolute absurdity of the defense. Bernadette Proy was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to a maximum of just 9 years behind bars. The sentence outraged the Costas family and the entire country. Bernadette Proy was released on parole in 1992 after serving only 7 years. At the age of 23, she walked out of a California Youth Authority facility completely free, while Kirsten Costas remains frozen in time. Forever 15. Forever the girl at the top of the high school social hierarchy. Forever the girl who someone decided was not worth living. Case 3. The Makeup Counter Murderer. Christine Powell High School is an unforgiving environment for anyone who does not fit the mold. In the affluent suburban sprawl of Clear Lake, Texas, 17-year-old Christine Powell lived a life defined by total isolation. Christine suffered from severe alopecia, a medical condition that left her completely hairless from childhood. She was a prime target for cruel, relentless bullying. She wore heavy wigs to hide her condition, but the torment followed her through the hallways anyway. She walked with her head down. She was a social outcast who felt entirely invisible. Then something remarkable happened. Two of the most beautiful and popular girls at Clear Lake High School noticed her. Rachel Coloradus and Tiffany Rowe noticed the bullying and took pity on Christine. They did not just offer a fleeting moment of sympathy. They brought her directly into their exclusive inner circle. Rachel and Tiffany became her absolute best friends. They gave her a complete makeover. They helped her find high-quality wigs. They taught her how to do her makeup. Because of their kindness, Christine was transformed. She went from an invisible outcast to a popular teenager. To Christine, this was salvation. This was the rescue she had been waiting for her entire life. She loved Rachel and Tiffany with the kind of intensity that only people who have experienced total isolation can understand. They were not just her friends, they were her saviors. But the incredible kindness of Rachel and Tiffany was about to meet with the ultimate betrayal. Behind her newfound popularity, Christine's personal life was spiraling out of control. She entered a highly toxic relationship with a 19-year-old drug addict named Christopher Snyder. Snyder was a volatile, violent man who harbored a deep hatred for Christine's popular friends. He isolated Christine and fed her intense paranoia. He convinced her that Rachel and Tiffany were secretly mocking her behind her back. He told her they were laughing at her. He told her they thought she was disgusting. He twisted her gratitude into a dark, festering resentment. On the afternoon of July 18th, 2003, Christine and Christopher arrived at the home in Clear Lake where Rachel and Tiffany lived. This was a house where Christine had been welcomed as an honored guest countless times. The events that followed resulted in the deaths of 4 people, including Rachel and Tiffany. What Christine did next represents the absolute pinnacle of sociopathic detachment. Just 1 hour after the incident, Christopher Snyder drove Christine to a local Walgreens. Christine walked inside, clocked in, and calmly worked her scheduled shift at the makeup counter. She applied cosmetics to customers with steady hands. When the bodies were discovered the next day, the community of Clear Lake was paralyzed by terror. Christine Powell stepped right back into the role of the devoted, heartbroken best friend. She flawlessly faked her grief. She attended the memorials for Rachel and Tiffany. She stood in front of the high school and wept loudly for the television cameras. For 3 entire years, she played the traumatized survivor. The police investigation sat entirely cold. The detectives looked at rival drug dealers and local criminals. They never once suspected the quiet girl with alopecia. The break in the case finally came in 2006. An anonymous tipster called Crime Stoppers and explicitly named Christopher Snyder and Christine Powell. The caller provided exact, highly specific details about the crime scene. Detectives tracked Christine Powell down to a hotel room in San Antonio, Texas. She was not living a stable life. She was hiding out in a transient state with her new husband, Justin Roth, and the two of them were actively abusing drugs. When investigators brought her in for questioning, Christine's 3-year charade finally ended. But even in police custody, she tried to manipulate the narrative. She did not initially provide a flat confession. She actively attempted to minimize her own culpability, shifting the entirety of the blame onto her dead ex-boyfriend. The physical evidence destroyed her lies. She was arrested and charged with capital murder. The trial laid bare the monstrous reality of her betrayal. The jury learned about the deeply personal nature of the crimes. They heard how Christine stood with the victims as they died. They realized that her 3 years of public mourning was nothing more than a calculated performance. In October 2008, the jury found Christine Powell guilty of capital murder. Because she was only 17 years old at the time she committed the crime, she was legally spared the death penalty. Instead, the judge sentenced her to life imprisonment, carrying a legally mandated minimum of 40 years to be served before she even becomes eligible for parole. Christine Powell took the unconditional kindness of 2 teenage girls and repaid them with betrayal and murder. Case 4. The torture chamber lure Kimberly Proctor. The desire for friendship is a fundamental human need. For a teenager who struggles to fit in, an invitation from peers feels like the ultimate victory. It is a validation that they are finally seen and accepted. But what happens when that invitation is a calculated death trap? In March 2010, the town of Langford, British Columbia, was a quiet, tight-knit community. 18-year-old Kimberly Proctor lived there with her family. Kimberly was a gentle, trusting girl with a soft heart. She loved animals. She cared deeply for her family. She possessed a quiet innocence that set her apart from the typical high school crowd. She struggled socially and often felt on the outside looking in. She just wanted to be accepted. 16-year-old Crew Wellwood and 17-year-old Cameron Moffat lived in the same community. To the outside world, they were typical teenage boys. Behind closed doors, their minds were entirely consumed by obsession with violence and death. In November 2009, Moffat changed his online display name to Necrophile Experience. Around this time, Kimberly messaged him to share a sad story about her pet rabbit. Moffat disturbingly replied, "You have death on you. You are going to die." He was not joking. He was not trying to be funny. He was making a statement of intent. The 2 teenagers wanted to inflict violence, and they needed a physical target. Kimberly was not a random victim. She was on their list of potential targets. They chose Kimberly because she was vulnerable and desperate for connection. On March 17, 2010, Wellwood executed the lure. He sent an email to Kimberly under the false pretense of wanting to apologize to her. For Kimberly, this was a massive social breakthrough. She accepted the apology and agreed to meet. The next day, she walked directly to Wellwood's home. She thought she was walking toward a fresh start. The illusion of friendship vanished the very second she stepped through the door. Wellwood and Moffat instantly ambushed her. They overpowered the terrified 18-year-old. What happened next resulted in Kimberly's death. The killers disposed of her body and attempted to hide the crime. 7 days after the incident, Moffat sent a message to Wellwood stating, "Since we did this and it was not hard, we should do it again." They had taken a life. The arrogance proved to be their absolute downfall. A local cyclist discovered evidence of the crime, and police quickly traced Kimberly's digital footprint directly to the boys. Detectives raided the home and arrested the teenagers. Inside the interrogation room, the unified front of the 2 offenders completely collapsed. During interrogation, Cameron Moffat attempted to minimize his role and save himself by repeatedly blaming Crew Wellwood. The sheer depravity of the crime forced the Canadian justice system to take aggressive action. Crew Wellwood and Cameron Moffat were charged as adults. Faced with undeniable physical and digital evidence, both boys pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. The judge delivered a definitive life sentence. However, the legal framework contained a massive constraint. Under the Canadian Youth Criminal Justice Act, even when elevated and sentenced as adults for first-degree murder, the absolute maximum penalty for youth offenders before parole eligibility is strictly capped at 10 years. Both killers remain incarcerated today after repeated parole denials. Kimberly Proctor walked into that house seeking connection and acceptance. She was met with calculated predation, orchestrated by two boys who viewed human life as a game. Case 5. The Digital Seduction? Jeremy Staney and Jasmine Richardson. When a small community is shattered by tragedy, the public naturally assumes the worst. They picture a violent home invasion. They picture a robbery gone wrong. They picture a dangerous drifter stalking the quiet streets. But what happens when the killer is already inside the home? In 2006, the town of Medicine Hat in Alberta, Canada was a quiet, safe, and close-knit community. Mark and Deborah Richardson built a stable and loving environment for their 2 children. The family lived a comfortable suburban life. But beneath this pristine facade, one family member was quietly descending into a deeply disturbing online world. A teenager in the home was socializing with an older group embedded in dark subcultures. Her behavior changed drastically. She created multiple fake profiles on social networking sites. She lied about her age. The person she encountered online was 23-year-old Jeremy Staney, a high school dropout living in a trailer park. He was unemployed and heavily involved with drugs. He suffered from massive delusions about his identity. The deeply unequal and predatory relationship quickly spiraled into a toxic obsession. Their connection was cemented online, where they plotted together using screen names. The family recognized the immense danger. They took immediate action to protect their child. They explicitly forbade the relationship. They confiscated electronics. The teenager deeply resented the parental interference. Locked from seeing each other in public, the two communicated in secret, fueling their shared resentment. They discussed eliminating the family. On the night of April 23, 2006, the plan was put into motion. Jeremy Staney arrived at the Richardson home and forced his way inside. What followed resulted in the deaths of all family members in the home. The perpetrators did not mourn. They did not panic. Hours after leaving the home, they attended a party down the street. They mingled with the crowd, appearing completely normal to everyone around them. They eventually escaped the city and drove to another community in Saskatchewan. The gruesome scene was discovered the very next day. First responders arrived to find multiple fatalities in the home. A massive manhunt tracked the couple down the following day in Saskatchewan. During interrogation, the teenager showed no remorse for the deaths. The person who was supposed to be a victim cooperated with the adult in the crime. Jeremy Staney was ultimately found to be the primary aggressor in the murders. The trial gripped the nation as it confronted the darker realities of online predation and youth vulnerability. Jeremy Staney was convicted of multiple counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The younger perpetrator, due to her age at the time, received a shorter sentence and has since been released. This case demonstrates how vulnerable teenagers can be exploited online and how quickly relationships can spiral into violence. Case 6. The Murder Weapon in the Selfie. Brittany Gargle. In the era of social media, a photograph is a permanent record of a moment in time. We document our friendships, our nights out, and our happiest memories for the entire world to see. We create digital footprints that remain forever. But a photograph can also capture a deadly deception in plain sight. 18-year-old Brittany Gargle and 18-year-old Cheyenne Antoine lived in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. To the outside world, they were the absolute definition of best friends. They shared clothes, secrets, and their social media feeds were flooded with pictures of them hugging. They were tagged together in dozens of photos. They appeared to be inseparable. Brittany was a bright, trusting, and deeply loyal teenager. She viewed Cheyenne as a sister. She had no reason to believe that the person she considered her closest friend was anything other than exactly what she appeared to be. Cheyenne's reality was drastically different. She lived a chaotic life, marred by severe emotional and physical abuse within the foster care system. This abuse had fueled a deep-seated anger and substance addiction. On the evening of Monday, March 24, 2015, the two teenagers prepared for a night out. They did their makeup, picked out their outfits, and paused to document the night. They took a selfie together and immediately uploaded it to Facebook. In the photograph, Brittany is smiling, leaning in close to her best friend. Cheyenne is standing right next to her, staring directly into the camera. The girls left the house and embarked on a night of heavy drinking and intense drug use. Moving through the city, they eventually drove out to an isolated dirt road on the southern edge of Saskatoon. Out in the freezing darkness, the extreme intoxication took over. A volatile argument erupted. There was no calculated plan. The escalation was swift. A physical struggle broke out. What happened during this struggle resulted in Brittany's death. Cheyenne did not attempt to hide the body. She callously left Brittany's remains on the side of the road. The very next morning, a passerby discovered Brittany, and the reality of the death hit the town. While Brittany's family descended into a nightmare of absolute grief, Cheyenne opened her laptop. Just hours after the incident, she navigated to Brittany's Facebook page and typed out a public message for the world to see. "Where are you? Have not heard from you. Hope you made it home safe." It was a flawlessly executed performance of a worried friend. Cheyenne inserted herself directly into the center of the family's trauma. She visited Brittany's relatives, looked them in the eyes, and sobbed uncontrollably. Cheyenne actively fed a fabricated storyline to the police. She told detectives that after they went out, Brittany left with an unknown male. When the investigation pressed on, Cheyenne escalated her lies. She went to her uncle and explicitly begged him to provide a false alibi. She instructed him to lie to the police. 6 months after the death, while the police were still actively investigating the case, Cheyenne returned to the exact Facebook selfie and commented, "I miss you so much, Britt. Wish heaven had visiting hours." She was mocking the death of her best friend. She was posting about her dead friend online. The entire charade collapsed when detectives interviewed Cheyenne's uncle. He cracked under the pressure and admitted that Cheyenne had explicitly begged him to lie. The physical evidence was conclusive. Investigators matched evidence from the scene directly to Cheyenne Antoine. Cheyenne Antoine was arrested and charged. In the courtroom, the sociopathic facade of the grieving best friend was stripped away. Faced with the undeniable physical evidence, Cheyenne accepted a plea deal for manslaughter. A defense lawyer explained that Cheyenne was so heavily intoxicated, she had impaired memory of events. Through her lawyer, she delivered a chilling statement to the grieving family. I will never forgive myself. I am really sorry. The judge applied sentencing principles, heavily citing Cheyenne's horrific history of abuse in the foster care system. Cheyenne Antoine was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Cheyenne was later granted release, but violated the terms of her freedom. She was arrested again in 2025. Brittany Gargle loved her best friend. She posed for a photograph completely unaware that her best friend was the person who would end her life. Cheyenne Antoine proved that monsters do not hide in the dark. They smile for the camera and post the picture online. Case 7. The Love Triangle Tragedy, Adrienne Reynolds. In the quiet suburbs of Moline, Illinois, a teenager's desperate search for acceptance ended in absolute horror. 16-year-old Adrienne Reynolds had just moved to a new town, leaving her old life behind to start over. She wanted to fit in, find a group of friends, and feel like a normal teenager. 3 days before her death, Adrienne wrote a heartbreaking letter to her supposed best friend. She asked a chilling question. Why do you hate me so much? Why do you want me to die? She handed that letter directly to the girl who was actively plotting her execution. 16-year-old Sarah Cobb and 17-year-old Corey Gregory were at the center of the local high school social scene. Sarah was fiercely territorial, viewing herself as the unquestioned leader of her friend group. She demanded absolute loyalty and crushed anyone who challenged her authority. Corey was Sarah's ex-boyfriend and her current closest confidant. When Adrienne Reynolds arrived in Moline, she naturally gravitated towards Sarah and Corey. She thought they were her bridge to a social life. But Adrienne made a fatal misstep. She asked Corey out on a date. The romantic invitation triggered a massive homicidal jealousy in Sarah. A deadly love triangle formed. Sarah did not just want to exclude Adrienne from her friend group. She wanted to erase her completely. The hatred escalated rapidly and publicly. Just hours before the incident, Sarah sat in her high school English class, opened her journal, and explicitly wrote down her plan. On the afternoon of January 21st, 2005, Sarah and Corey laid their trap. They invited Adrienne to get food with them during school break. It was a casual, everyday invitation that made Adrienne feel included. She climbed into the back seat of Sarah's car. Sarah drove the group to a local Taco Bell. Inside the vehicle, a physical altercation broke out. Adrienne was overpowered by the two attackers. What happened resulted in Adrienne's death. The killers did not panic. They drove away, with Adrienne's body concealed in the vehicle. They traveled to a secluded farm owned by Corey's grandparents. They attempted to hide the evidence. The following day, Sarah and Corey realized they needed to take further action. They recruited a third person, a 16-year-old boy named Nathan Gaudette, to assist in concealing the crime. What they did next represents sociopathic detachment. Covered in the aftermath of their actions, Sarah, Corey, and Nathan drove straight to a local McDonald's. They sat down in the dining room, ordered lunch, and casually ate their meal. After finishing their meal, they attempted to dispose of remaining evidence. The weekend ended and the killers resumed their normal routines. On Monday morning, Sarah Cobb walked into her high school and flawlessly played the role of the innocent, concerned friend. When classmates asked where Adrienne was, Sarah feigned worry. She acted completely oblivious to her role in the disappearance. The facade crumbled quickly. Police launched an investigation into the missing teenager and immediately identified Sarah and Corey as the last people seen with her. Detectives located the farm and discovered evidence of the crime. The physical evidence was undeniable. Confronted by the police, the teenage killers turned on each other. The unified front dissolved into vicious blame shifting. While incarcerated and awaiting trial, Sarah pushed the blame entirely onto Corey. Corey fired back from behind bars. Sarah Cobb's first trial ended in a mistrial. The prosecution immediately retried the case. In 2006, a new jury found Sarah Cobb guilty of first-degree murder. The judge handed down consecutive sentences. Corey Gregory pleaded guilty to the same charges and received a comparable sentence. Nathan Godet pleaded guilty to concealment of a homicidal death and received a juvenile sentence. Nathan Godet served less than 4 years before being released. 4 years later, Godet died in an automobile crash. Sarah Cobb and Corey Gregory remain incarcerated in the Illinois Department of Corrections. Adrienne Reynolds moved to a new city, hoping to find a place where she belonged. She handed a letter to her killer, begging to know why she was hated. Her question was answered with violence. Case 8. The girl who slept in her victim's bed for 3 years. What is the absolute sickest betrayal a human being can commit? Taking the life of your best friend is a profoundly evil act. But moving into her house, bringing your own child to live in her bedroom, wearing her clothes, and comforting her devastated mother for 3 entire years, all while pushing the police to find the real killers, is a level of psychological manipulation that defies understanding. It is a deception so monstrous it sounds completely fabricated. But in the quiet suburbs of Southern California, this nightmare was reality. In 1985, the town of Arleta, California, was a working-class neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley. 17-year-old Michelle Avila, known to everyone as Missy, was the center of her social circle. She was incredibly beautiful, popular, and possessed a radiant, magnetic personality. She had a wide group of friends and boys constantly vied for her attention. Missy lived a vibrant teenage life. Deeply loved by her family, especially her mother, Irene Avila, Missy's absolute best friend in the world was Karen Severson. The two girls had been inseparable since they were 8 years old. They grew up together, sharing every secret and milestone. They understood each other completely. They were sisters in every way except biology. But as they entered their late teenage years, a massive toxic shift occurred. Karen was not as conventionally attractive or popular as Missy. While Missy thrived socially, Karen developed a dark, festering resentment. She completely envied Missy's beauty and the effortless attention she received. This toxic jealousy was shared by another girl in their friend group, 17-year-old Laura Doyle. Laura was intensely possessive and insecure. The breaking point arrived over romantic relationships. Karen and Laura became fixated on Missy. They made threats. They escalated their hostility. The abuse culminated just 10 days before the murder, when Karen attacked Missy in a neighborhood park. Instead of walking away from the friendship, Karen and Laura allowed their jealousy to mutate into a murderous obsession. They decided to destroy the girl they envied. On the afternoon of October 1st, 1985, the trap was set. Laura Doyle drove her car to the Avila home and picked Missy up. Missy climbed into the passenger seat, expecting to spend the day driving around. Another teenager, Eva Chiruno, was also in the vehicle. Laura steered the car far away from the familiar suburban streets. She drove deep into the Angeles National Forest, navigating remote areas. They pulled over near a secluded, heavily wooded area surrounding a mountain stream. Karen Severson was already there, waiting. Missy stepped out of the car. The illusion of a friendly hangout vanished. Karen and Laura cornered her. They completely unleashed years of pent-up jealousy and rage. They screamed at Missy. A brutal physical assault followed. What happened next resulted in Missy's death. Eva Chiruno did not participate in the final act. The girls left the forest and drove back to their suburban lives. 3 days later, hikers walking through the forest spotted evidence of the crime. Police arrived and discovered Missy's remains. The community of Arleta was instantly paralyzed by fear. Irina Avila, Missy's mother, suffered a complete psychological collapse. Her beautiful daughter had been murdered. This is exactly where the crime transitions from a brutal murder into the sickest betrayal in true crime history. Karen Severson did not run. She executed a masterclass in sociopathic deception. Recognizing that Irene was completely shattered by the loss of her daughter, Karen stepped in to fill the void. She offered herself as the grieving mother's ultimate emotional rock. Karen physically moved into the Avila household, bringing her own 2-year-old daughter to live in the dead teenager's home. For the next 3 years, Karen lived inside the home of the girl she murdered. She literally slept in Missy's bed. She went into the dead girl's closet and wore Missy's clothes. She went to work wearing the clothes of the girl she had murdered. Laura Doyle played her part as well, sending the grieving mother sympathy cards. Karen's performance went far beyond the walls of the house. She aggressively inserted herself into the police investigation. She constantly harassed the detectives, demanding to know what they were doing to find Missy's killers. She publicly handed out missing person flyers. She fed Irene phantom leads and false hope, intentionally sending the police on wild goose chases to protect herself and Laura. She fed on the family's trauma, playing the role of the traumatized best friend flawlessly. For 3 entire years, Irene Avila looked at the girl sleeping in her dead daughter's bed and considered her a second child. She had absolutely no idea she was living with the person responsible for her daughter's death. The flawless charade finally cracked in the summer of 1988. The immense psychological weight of the crime completely broke the third girl, Eva Chiruno. She could no longer live with the secret of what had happened in the Angeles National Forest. She walked into a police station and delivered the full truth. She detailed what had happened. She explicitly named Karen Severson and Laura Doyle as responsible. Detectives gathered enough evidence to make the arrests. When the police placed the handcuffs on Karen Severson and Laura Doyle, the absolute horror of the betrayal slammed into the Avila family. Irene realized that the girl she had fed, housed, and cried with for 3 years was the very person responsible for her daughter's death. The trial took place in 1990. The courtroom was forced to confront a level of deception that sickened everyone in attendance. The prosecution laid out the facts of the crime and the subsequent years of psychological torture inflicted upon the mother. The jury convicted Karen Severson and Laura Doyle of second-degree murder. The judge handed down sentences of 15 years to life in state prison. The justice system eventually allowed both killers to walk free. Karen Severson was granted parole on December 9th, 2011. Laura Doyle remained in prison for another year and was paroled in December 2012. After her release, Karen Severson published materials about the crime. She attempted to profit from the case, a move that deeply outraged the Avila family. The audacity of profiting from the crime prompted the state of California to take legislative action. They passed Assembly Bill 538, legally known as Missy's Law, which requires entities publishing works made by criminals to notify victims' families. Missy Avila trusted her lifelong best friend. She got into a car expecting a fun afternoon, completely unaware that she was being delivered to her own death. Karen Severson proved that the most terrifying predators do not always lurk in the dark. They smile and present themselves as grieving friends. From the girl who presented herself as a devoted friend to the teenager who manipulated justice systems, the stories of these 8 young killers represent the ultimate betrayal of friendship. They are the confidants who calculated murder. They are the trusted companions who turned into predators. Their crimes leave a permanent scar on our understanding of human nature. If you found this exploration into these cases compelling, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share your thoughts on these stories in the comments below. Tell us which case disturbed you most. Tell us where you are watching from. Tell us what time it is where you are. We are Dark Truth Crime. We are here to uncover the betrayals that society refuses to acknowledge. We are here to show you that the most dangerous people in your life are not strangers. They are the people who know your name. Thank you for watching,